setting up the electronic.
Oh, it did set up.
Okay, I apologize. The YouTube thing's a little slow sometimes. Okay, Mr. Keller.
Here.
Mrs. Clock. Here. Mr. Kramer.
Here.
Mr. Skips.
Here.
Mrs. Lynch. Here. Mr. Jacobson.
Here.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, here. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for the invocation. I'll lead the invocation. Madam Clerk.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please remain standing. God, we come to you tonight to do your service for your people of this great city of Norfolk, but also keep in mind the better, bigger community that we're part of, that we just pledged to our nation. This past week was very eye-opening experience for me about what the United States Army of Alaska is doing to prepare us in a multinational readiness role with 10 other countries. And for this, we know we need your prayers. We ask you humbly, please grant our wish. For this, we say, amen. Thank you. Be seated. We're looking for an action item for the approval agenda on pages 1 and 2.
to approve the agenda.
Second.
Motion to approve, seconded. Motion by Welch, seconded by Jacobson. Any amendments?
Move to move the second item to consent agenda.
Okay, there's a motion to take ordinance 2306
2306,
to consent.
the budget grant, budget to accept the grant fund.
Second.
Okay, that's moved and seconded.
I just have a question. We're just advancing it to the next meeting because it takes 2 meetings to adopt the ordinance, correct?
That's true, but what we're talking about, what we're going to read tonight,
Right.
right? You're correct about that. So, Madam Clerk, on the amendment,
All right, Mrs. Clock,
Yes.
Mr. Jacobson,
Yes.
Mr. Keller, Mrs. Welch. Yes. Mr. Skips,
Yes.
Mr. Kramer,
Yes.
Mr. Mayor.
yes. Anyone wish to change your vote? Now, on the main motion, now that we've had it amended.
All right, Mrs. Welch. Yes. Mr. Skips,
Yes.
Mr. Jacobson,
Yes.
Mr. Kramer,
Yes.
Mr. Keller,
Yes.
Mrs. Clock,
Yes.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes. Anyone to change your vote? No, we have the motion. We have the new agenda before us with only item A as new business. The next action item is approval of the minutes from the March 20th, 2023. You can find those on pages 3 and 12 of your packet.
Move to approve.
Second.
There's a motion to approve the minutes by Jacobson. I didn't hear who seconded.
I know.
I know who seconded. Okay. And are there any corrections to the minutes? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, call the
All right, Mr. Keller,
Yes.
Mr. Skips,
Yes.
Mr. Kramer, Mr. Jacobson,
Yes.
Mrs. Clock,
Yes.
Mrs. Welch. Yes. Mr. Mayor.
yes. So congratulations, the minutes are now approved as recorded. Communications of Mayor, section 6 here. I try to capsulize this. And if you'll look, also, I gave each of you one of these cards so you could see what's going on. There's 2 sides to this card. I may reference it from time to time about what I've been doing with the United States Army Alaska, and specifically here at Fort Wainwright and Eielson with the 11th Airborne Division, which is still rather infantile, and it's really working hard, and it's being recognized with our NATO partners and our partners from Australia, New Zealand, and Japan as well. So I'm going to go through what I've experienced here in the past few days with them. On Saturday, Sunday, March 25th and 26th, approximately between 9 p.m. and 3 a.m., I was out at Fort Wainwright at the Garrison Command Headquarters and at Hangar 1 to witness Joint Pacific Readiness Exercise 2302. This multinational readiness center exercise is being represented by ourselves and 10 other countries, so a total of 11 countries. And we watched 479 paratroopers jumping out, taking the field as if they were taking a hostile enemy airfield. They had half of the field in the dark, and they had to demonstrate as they jumped out of their 8 C-130s and their 1 C-17 transport that they could make in what had to be barely 0 degrees jump in that temperature in the dark and successfully take the field. And they had ambulances on each side of the river. Thank God nobody broke through the ice. There were a few people from my own sources that had shattered femurs from this, and there were some minor injuries, but for the most part, it was a successful jump. It was 2 hours delayed because of handling and loading, and they couldn't load all 530 something jumpers. They just didn't have enough room in those aircraft. So 479 made the jump. What I learned as part of that exercise is that the 11th Airborne is now participating in approximately 18 exercises a year. This could take up to 40 weeks of their year. So there's only about 12 weeks of the year they're not exercising. And what's really big coming on the screen now with them is Finland. I think you'll see in the news it's set tomorrow to enter into NATO, and Sweden followed. There's a lot of reasons we won't go in tonight about problems that go way back to World War II, but after 75 years now, we got Finland and Sweden coming into NATO. But more than likely, like we know now, it's going to be separately. So that was March 25th and 6th. On March 31st, it was go to Fort Wainwright to the Wilson National Training Center. And that was the better half of the day. And what we learned from that center, we got to meet a lot of these folks from these 10 foreign participants. There were Mongolians, of course, Canadians, Australians, folks from Japan were there. We didn't have the ones from Europe there, but most of them were there to see how we do things. And what I found out both on the weekend and on Friday is that the 11th Airborne Division is often brought to these to be the experienced leader, believe it or not. These countries can't afford to let their guard down and bring themselves here to Alaska. So they bring us to their facilities in the Arctic Circle that they host, but we bring the expertise to them. Is what it really boils down to. That was pretty good. So in the morning, I was at the Wilson National Training Center, and that's the first time I've ever met General Flynn. He's the 4-star general that commands all the Army forces in the Pacific Theater. So I think I've met every 4-star we have now, except U.S. European Command and Central Command out of Florida. So I've met everybody on this side of the world at least. And in the afternoon, we would have gone by CH-47 helicopters, a pair of Chinooks. For my own sake, I'm glad we didn't. We went by Sprinter van. We went to what's called winter camp at Eielson. I was up at the upper camp first, which is like where the command post is. Got to see some of the newfangled things that they are inventing that are still very experimental in their nature. That makes it where they can live in the Arctic. We're talking about things we might take for granted, which is like a thing that can cook for an entire brigade. They could cook meals for 750 people. They can cook 2 meals a day. That's a big thing. And they have refrigerated, I don't know how to explain the type of equipment it is, but it can withstand minus 60 degrees. You wouldn't think that you'd have to worry about it, but you do. And it could go from minus 60 to 45 degrees and still hold the food like it's supposed to. And then they have these new cooking facilities to cook in. So that was in the upper camp. And half of us went to the upper camp, the other half lower camp. And then we flip-flopped somewhere in the afternoon. So I got to see how people in lower camp, how they live, as well as the medical facility. It's almost, we wouldn't call it a MASH unit, but something like that. Whereas if you got hurt somewhere in the temperate zone of the world, your medic's going to take care of you. If you get hurt in the Arctic, anywhere in the Arctic Circle, it's not going to be one person that comes to your aid. It's going to be 2 or 3 more, because the vehicles can't pull you through all that snow. What they learn really the hard way here, they're learning and demonstrating to each other, is that like when they did a job at the Yukon training area, which is east of Eielson, by the time they hit the ground, the snow was so light and fluffy that they were buried up to their necks in snow, and people had to come and dig them out. If someone were simulated to have been injured, you have to take them out on a toboggan. You could barely walk in it yourself. They learned the hard way that snow machines don't work in that light and fluffy snow, and it would take them hours just to go 5 kilometers, which is like 3 miles. When they tried to do it on foot, they could go about 2 football fields in 90 minutes. So they're learning all the things that are going to challenge them to either take an offensive in the Arctic or to defend our homeland in the Arctic. And all these countries are learning that alongside of us, and it is not easy. So that was my takeaways from that. That was about a 9-hour day there. Meanwhile, back to the world that we live in here, on March 28th, Randy Hobbs of Randy Hobbs Inc. joined me down at our attorney. I had asked for that meeting way back in January. And he joined us to put together the components of how we would stand up a combined heat and power utility that North Pole will run. Randy Hobbs has the experience, the know-how of how to put this together. Zane wants us to fashion it the same way the IGU's been fashioned. We'll have more about that later as we work out the details. And he reset for me the language in the memorandum of understanding that we have with Marathon Oil. So instead of us being able to say we're ready to go, say 1 October of 23, we pushed it to 1 January of 24, because there's some things that have come into the fray now, like 1% money, and you can't have started before you have to get the loan approved before you start. So it behooves us to not start right away to put in for it. In the meantime, we think that what we will do is that we will go to Aurora Energy. A lot of you may know that as the combined heat and power that already operates for the University of Alaska Fairbanks. And we have that whole entity there. Instead of recreating the wheel, we could, if we choose, it's up to the council, we could contract with Aurora Energy to actually run our combined heat and power as we get it stood up. In the meantime, we had a meeting after our staff meeting here. We had a meeting with Chris Forrest of Golden Valley Electric. I'm not inclined to tell you everything we discussed, but we're working as an entity with their entity to have a non-disclosure agreement with them within the next 45 to 60 days. That Golden Valley would have a purchase agreement to purchase power from us. A prior purchase agreement would be very advantageous for us. So we're working that out with them as we speak. We have given our what we call TBEC, which is Two Bear Environmental Conservation Grant Writers. I'm sure Danny will report that in his own report, but we've given them quite a lot of tasks to do, but we're working side by side on concept papers that are due April 14th, and we just about have those nailed down. So I'll say that much. Finally, I'll close that looking at what comes up this week. Tomorrow, when we go to our SynGas meeting, then the entity of North Pole will be introduced to the rest of the team. That's a development in the right direction that we're going to get us up and running. And on April 5th, those of you who know Hank Bartos, he will come to discuss with me a City of North Pole resolution to support the U.S. Veterans Cemetery in Salcha, so that we can have that on the next agenda. I think, as a matter of fact, they're going to delay their assembly meeting this week, he says, to wait for the City of North Pole, the City of Fairbanks to be all together at the same time So he would probably come and make a presentation to us on our next meeting on April the 17th. And with that, I think I've said enough, but I would refer you to these that are brought back to you from the 11th Airborne Division. See what we're doing with the United States Army of Alaska up here. So I'll close out that and now ask under item 7, are there any council member questions of the mayor?
Oh.
Yes,
You
please.
said that you guys met, Rob and Zane. What day did you guys meet?
March 28th. That was on Tuesday morning. And I had asked for that meeting way back in January. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
I'm just confused about the location of the Veterans Cemetery. For some reason, I thought that was gonna be, at one time up the Steves Highway, maybe out in the Fox area. This is the first time I've heard that it's gonna be out in Salcha. Is this something that's coming from Mr. Bartos, or
No,
it's the location that's been chosen, by the group that's been working on this for years?
they've been working on it for years, and so I don't get the facts wrong. I'll let Mr. Bartos, when he comes, to give us a full briefing on it, but apparently some individuals didn't do their due diligence. Up at Fox, that wasn't done. You may or may not be aware of the one at Nestor, where there was a range, and now they found out that all the full metal jackets that were shot out there create an environmental hazard that would take so much to clean up, but according to him, somebody's made millions of dollars out of this, and the governor's not very happy with it. And neither site is suitable now. And so Salcha is suitable. And Salcha has one thing that a lot of people don't know. It's the highest concentration per capita of vets in the whole state. 32% of Salcha are veterans. They are telling me that their intention is when they get it up and running, that their first year in operation, they'll inter 90 vets there from the very first year, which is pretty ambitious, actually, put 90 vets in there. But I wish I knew more. I know that Gutenberg did a lot when he was down in the legislature. And so, but there seems to be some problems that will not let it be in Fox or Eston. So Salt is the place they came to.
Sure.
Any other questions? And I'm sure people will give a report on what happened March 28th with the local community. Yes.
Who will be in charge of the heat and power if that does get built?
If it is the way that Zane's going to structure it, you'd have a board. And one of the things we looked at really sincerely was to look at Aurora Power and say, we'll contract it to them to actually do the technicals and administration of it, because they do that already. So they know how to do it. But we would profit from it, from our power purchase agreements that we would do. So it's all trying to be brokered together by, for the most part, grant money. That's what we have grant writers for. It'd be a big asset to the city, but we have to make sure that we have the money for operation and maintenance of it. And so we still have a lot of work ahead of us, at least another year's work ahead of us before it would even be turned on. But there are 2 natural gas-fired generators right now. They will create the electricity that Golden Valley is going to need, and at the same time provide us with 195-degree hot water that will replace our oil burners in these buildings of ours in this city. And I'm losing my voice. If you can't tell, it's falling off.
I have another question.
Yeah.
Can you explain the process of what goes on the agenda, like how that comes about? So do you guys have like a meeting?
We have a staff meeting. It's like for example, this was done on a Tuesday on March the 28th. Okay. People on the staff will bring things to me, and then we will discuss them at the staff meeting so that we know that supporting documentation that is well thought out and that it comes before the council in a way that makes sense so that by Thursday, Friday timeframe, before we get to this point, that you have those in your packet. It also could be that 2 or more council members, well, what's the most you can have? You can have 3 without violating the Open Meetings Act, but they could bring something to be put on the agenda as well. It's in our code.
Is there stuff that people bring up that doesn't go on agenda that you like decline? And if so, why?
There may be some things that I wouldn't support because I don't see the merit in it and all, but that doesn't mean I would decline them because somebody else brought them up. But if something has to be worked out first, and when it doesn't get worked out, if some members of the council can find a way to work it out, maybe they see something that say that I, the mayor, would see, then they could bring it forward if they wanted to.
You mean it doesn't like work out?
I can't hear you, please.
What do you mean it doesn't work out? Is it just because they don't have the supporting documents, or you just don't agree with?
No, usually it's the supporting documents or something that doesn't go against something we've already done.
So the council sees everything that everyone brings up, pretty much?
They should.
Okay.
You know, our staff meetings are supposedly for the staff. The pro tem is there because I always resented the fact that when I was a pro tem, things were being held in the mayor's vest pocket. So when the mayor had something that got in the way, I wouldn't know what I was supposed to do. So I know I'm not a spring chicken and I'm having medical difficulties. So I'd rather have the pro tem who was somebody I served with when I was a rookie. He was the mayor and he's got the best interest of the city. I think he should be there at my meeting. Yeah. But it's not something that's open to the general public either, our staff meeting. That's what the staff is there for, you know. Does that make sense? I hope.
Yeah, but is there a delay? Maybe someone brings it up and it just gets like delayed, meeting after meeting? Is there like, or do you just bring it up on the agenda? Like, are there stuff that's like, say the police brought something up, is it gonna be delayed because?
If there's something that isn't in concert with the current rules or laws or ordinance or what do you call it, the charter of the city, or it needs to have more investigation or more thought put into it, that's a good, but we're talking about hypothetical.
Mhm.
We're always talking about hypothetical. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Yes, Ms. Clack.
When you mention, staying in the contract, at what point will we be privy to seeing that contract that's gonna be written?
He hasn't put it together yet, but you will before we vote because you have to vote on it.
Okay,
You have to vote on it. You can't do it unilaterally.
I know,
Yeah,
but I'm
yeah,
talking
yeah.
about before it's totally, that we get to put it to a vote.
Oh,
When
yeah,
do- when do we see it?
you'll get to see it and Zane will probably come to us for the first reading of it, more than
Okay.
likely, to talk us through it, why he chose the language that he chose.
Okay,
That's what we go to him for, by the way.
that's what we want him for?
That's what we go to him for,
Okay.
because we don't know the legal way of putting it together. Miss Fogarty, what's that? Tricia? Were you saying something? I didn't hear you. Oh, well, yeah, I know they're not nice.
Yeah, especially if you got a back problem.
I don't know where we got those from. Yes, somebody's got a hand up this way.
So in the case of a council, for example, the council brings something before to come onto the agenda. One of the reasons why that I could see that you would delay putting it on if it's not properly thought through ahead of time. And instead of sitting here and trying to hash it out for hours and hours, and with amendment this and amendment that without having the proper backing for it. I know I've watched them do that at the borough meeting many times where they just, by the time they get finished, it's just totally different. But it also something might not be practical to put it through at that particular point for whatever reason. I mean, that's what I'm thinking. I mean, I've seen things that that's been suggested in the past that we bring up, and it took staff chiefs and whatever to work it over, chew it through a few times and stuff like that, for example, to get it up. So it's not that it's not gonna get there. It might just not be now or yesterday, way I look at it. So.
I think in a historical perspective, the one thing that interests me the most was that when I came to this city, and we're going back to ancient history here, but when I came through, we hadn't had a real, review of our whole schedule of our pay to our employees in 14 years. And they were far, far, far behind. And I was the director that Mayor Isaacson said, you can chair, audit finance. So when I did, we had to bring up, it was a 12% overhaul. It took about 8 months altogether to put it together. And so that was how that was. And my caveat was, don't let this go 14 years again. So, well, somebody let it go 6 years. We got further behind again. So we actually had a total compensation committee that started in 2020 and finished in 21. It was about a 14-month-long process. And the idea was, now that we've done that, let's not go 6 years. Let's do it on a 3-year cycle. That's where we're supposed to be at right now. We're supposed to this summer. That's why I asked people to be on that committee this summer, to put it together. So something that we agreed upon hasn't even, it went into effect. The payroll, it started first payroll in January of 22. Okay, so it hasn't had 15 months yet. And it's supposed to be reviewed this summer. That's what you heard Chief Dutra say, that we're probably doing the homework now ahead of time, because sometimes you can't just be static. You have to be dynamic, because we find ourselves in a really tough situation right now, trying to compete. We don't have the kind of coffers some of these bigger cities have, where they can offer $30,000 bonuses and things. So we're trying to move as best as we can, but we don't have the big coffers to make the big giant bonuses that people hire. So we're trying to keep our head treading water. That's what we're trying to do. That's just one thing.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Anybody else? Anything else? Thank you. So that closes council comments. And we'll go to citizens' comments on items not on the agenda, limited to 5 minutes. Anyone here? No, Madam Clerk?
No.
Citizens' comments are now declared closed. Do we have any, oh, we do have communications. Trish, you want to go first?
Good evening, everyone. I sent out financials on Friday. I didn't get any response, so hopefully you guys received those. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. We got email today that the new statement was cut this weekend, but we don't have the paper statement yet, so we probably won't get that for a week or so. And that's pretty much why it comes to the second meeting of the month, but it was last month's final. So if you have questions about that, I know it's a little confusing. We are starting to gear up and work on the audit. We had a couple calls with our Anchorage advisors last week. And we're trying to get in touch with Alliance. We've had a couple of emails into them, but they're still unanswered as of this meeting. So that's kind of where we're at right now. We've got about 2 weeks and a few days to get the year wrapped up and give them our data. And once we do that, we can't go back and make any changes into 2022.
And so Alliance, have they given us a letter
No.
yet? We're looking for a letter from,
Right. And they're aware. I don't know how many times we have to ask them for it, but they must be busy. Something must be going on that I'm not aware of.
I just thought their committal letter would already
Right,
be in
right.
our hand.
Last year, we received that in April. I didn't go back years prior. It seems like at one point we were receiving that letter at the beginning of the year. But last year they had merged. Last year was their first year as a merged alliance, so.
working out with, Altman and Rogers?
Yeah, we've had a lot of good communications, some good information that we didn't see before.
They're a backup because, Christie used to be able to use somebody who, when, Cook and Hagenberg joined with Kohler, Schmidt, and Hutchinson to formalize accounting, now you can no longer use who you used to be able to go to.
Right, right.
But-
We had a relationship with her when, Bryce Ward was mayor. In fact, we met her originally with a project that Steve had. Do you recall that? So, Steve and I worked with her on a JAG, or not JAG, but, Justice and Treasury, accounts, and
Or about
shored those
Kathleen
up.
Thompson.
Kathleen Thompson, yeah. So we had a good relationship. And then, of course, when they merged, it was a conflict of interest.
Conflict of interest. It's getting harder and harder here to get qualified people to work with. Okay, any questions for Tristan? Ms. Wells?
I'm just curious about, even though, I mean, I think we mentioned that last time too, even though we don't have a letter from them, that doesn't stop you and your staff from preparing
Oh, no,
everything. I mean,
right.
is there anything different except for the date every year for the committal?
Yeah, no, we've already got the list. They give us a list of things that they'd like to see prepared. Mostly that list doesn't change. They might add one or two little caveats. At the end of the year, last year, of course, the person doing the field work is fairly new. And at the end of last year, he had asked for some things that we hadn't been asked for before, like, minutes of the council meetings, ordinance that they passed, from January to June, those sorts of things. But I mean, they must be combing through looking for something, or maybe they're not. Maybe that's just something they require to have in their file.
Any other questions? Thank you, Richard.
You're welcome.
Appreciate the report. And I know next time we meet, you'll have the numbers. Because can't get it faster than that. Be even harder in May, because our next meeting after that's May 1st. You can't get your statements before they're mailed out. How about Chief Dutra?
Just a few quick things. So I attended the second confirmation hearing today in front of the Senate Judiciary on the Alaska Police Standards Council appointment from the governor. So went well, uneventful actually. So I guess it'll go forward to the full legislator here towards the end of the month for confirmation. So Lieutenant Smith is in Anchorage again this week, because I got to send him to another leadership course. So I'm just sending him as much as I can. This will be the second course I've sent him to in short order. So I'm sure you're going to get a lot out of that. Lieutenant Smith also, along with the Homer PD lieutenant, came up this week and taught a parents education campaign on internet usage for teens and stuff. So that I heard it wasn't well attended. I couldn't make it, but it wasn't as well attended as we'd have liked. But next time, I think maybe we'll just advertise it a little more and get on the news and get it in the paper, and we'll hopefully get a better response from the community. But nonetheless, it was a nice effort and they did a good job, and I heard it was well received. Stanton, the construction folks for our new addition, is working on some sheetrock cracks that they'd had from the original build. So they're in there fixing those this week. I'm gonna get those hopefully painted up by Thursday. I was asked by the statewide APOA board, which is the Alaska Police Officers Association, to come to Anchorage May 2nd, I believe, to do a presentation on the range and all the efforts that we've put forward in the farthest north chapter to get the range out and all the hurdles we've been facing and such. So we get the state board to support our efforts. They're really happy and pleased with the efforts we've done so far. And they just want to hear from me about what the outlook looks like for next year and what needs to be done. So I look forward to that. All expense paid, by the way. We don't have to pay anything. I thought that was pretty cool. We are preparing for the Police Memorial Day at the Trooper Gaybridge, Trooper Scott Johnson Memorial Park on May 19th at 11. The lunch will be provided by APOA at North Pole PD after the event. So if you can make it out, that'd be great. Always good to have council members there. As you know, I don't know if you've already heard, but we had an incident at Monroe today. It turned out to be a hoax, but I did receive several calls from folks thanking our department for its efforts in putting forth Alice into the community and the district, because apparently it was executed perfectly. and done real well. And parents, some of the parents were super happy with that. The kids felt safe, and that's important. And I give credit actually to Lorna because she's phenomenal. She's one of my right hands when it comes to teaching Alice, and she's pretty good at it. So kudos to her, and kudos to the school for doing well. It sounds like all the officers who responded to that did a good job too. So I just want to say it's important for us to continue to push that, even though it was a hoax. You never know when these things. So I do give hats off to Lorna though. Wednesday, I'm doing a presentation to Rotary about just basically things happening around the police department, the city, and crime trends and things like that. That's all I have.
Chief, I have a question there. Did you tell me that you have a possible interested party to fill our detective position?
Yes,
Okay. How's that progressing along?
it's they've made the first initial steps, but I don't get too excited till they,
No, till,
yeah.
yeah, I agree. And you don't have anything to update us on someone for temporary for Gina Lake, do you?
There's nobody at this time, no.
Nobody this time. So with that spell for 12-hour shift possibility,
410s,
410 still?
yeah.
Okay.
In your report, you said that Representative Prax called to tell you that there is likely no chance the policy project will get funded. What is the policy project?
Well, I missed number 4. Thank you. Yeah, number 4, yeah, Representative Prax called me today and just advised me that the policy project is, I talked to the council about it briefly, I think before, but it's an Alaska Association of Chiefs of Police project. Kind of there was about 10 years ago, 15 years ago, it was pushed by North Slope and never went anywhere. And I kind of grabbed onto it and pitched it to the board. And it is a effort to bring a statewide police policy manual to every city and village and municipality in the state. So we're looking for seed funding to write the policy. So about 36 states currently have this policy manual available to them, and they pay a subscription fee. And then this policy manual gets updated monthly, or when there's new rulings in your particular district, your judicial district that might affect you. Like us, it's the 9th circuit court, excuse me, not judicial district. Anyways, and then the Supreme Court rulings or anything that might affect law enforcement, they would then initiate a policy change and then put out updates. And they also put out monthly updates for training, so you can learn the policies and updates. So it's really the new way to do things, because then you have a slew of attorneys at a corporate level looking at law enforcement liability. And what it does is it reduces the overall liability for the cities and the municipalities, especially those villages that have 1 or 2 cops that don't have a very robust manual. And I'll be honest with you, it takes a certain level of expertise to rewrite a manual or rewrite a policy, make sure that it's meeting the standards set by, the new ruling out of the 9th Circuit. So it's kind of the way of the future. And then with that policy in hand, each agency could then work towards what's called accreditation. We are getting ready to apply for that. We haven't applied for it yet. We still got a few things to button up. But once we do, we could apply for accreditation, and that becomes a way for us to a path to getting a rubber stamp of excellence, basically, and for a police department to achieve. It's a lot of agencies try to achieve it, but there's a national standard called CALIA. It's extremely difficult to meet and very expensive. But there's been a new change in the industry. There's states are now adopting their own accreditation standards. So now Alaska has adopted Oregon, and just 2 weeks ago, they just took the Oregon accreditation program and now are going to have an Alaska accreditation program. So now Alaska will have its own accreditation program. And that's really cool because we can then apply for it. They come in and look at our procedures and our policies and say, yes, you meet the standard, and they give you a nice stamp of approval, and you have to go back for a reaccreditation every 3 years. What it does is it's a bond between the police department and the community, saying that we achieve a certain standard in how we enforce laws and how we treat people in the civil rights and all kinds of processes that the police department uses, that they meet a high level of standards. So it's a pet project of mine, and I've been in front of the legislature 2 or 3 times now, pitching it, to them. I had a lot of interest. But money's tight this year and, $500,000 we're asking for, 550 to seed this, program. It doesn't look like it's gonna happen this year, but it sounds promising for next year. Now that I've introduced it to the legislator, and matter of fact, in my confirmation hearing, they even asked me to talk about it. So I talked about it in my confirmation hearing, and I got to talk to front of the Senate Judiciary about it. And Senator Gray Jackson, has said she would sponsor it, but I think because it was such a tough year and an overwhelming, a pretty big project, I think they're gonna, hopefully next year, we'll get a bite on that. So I'm optimistic. We'll see. So that's it in a nutshell.
Any questions?
So
Mr.
am
Black.
I to understand that your startup for this is gonna be 5,500? Is that what we're asking for help and assistance in? When
Yes.
you're approaching the legislation? And, and Praxis saying that at this time that the funding and stuff is not there?
Correct.
Okay.
And that would be, so what they do is they write the policy for the state of Alaska. Once that policy is written, then there becomes an implementation phase. So the money that they fund would then fund the policy, fund portions of the implementation phase across the state. So if it's, say, like a small city like Nenana, if they had a police department with two or three officers, they would have a small implementation fee. It could be covered by the state, and then they would have to pay their $1,500 a year to be part of that policy. Us, it's like $9,000 a year to pay towards that. Well worth every penny. And AML is even talking about paying a portion of this, our insurance folks, paying a portion of this funding annually to get these cities and villages on this new policy. Because you can imagine the liability reductions and the numbers are, I could actually do a presentation if you'd like. On the numbers, the liability reduction is in some cases 45 to 55%. So they're seeing less lawsuits against cities. They're seeing less settlements against cities. Because if you have a policy that's been vetted and is tried and true, and you're an accredited agency, the lawyers look at that and go, probably not going to be likely to be successful at suing. So it's a pretty big deal. And it's, not that our policies are bad. It's just that, we don't have a slew of lawyers looking at them all the time, vetting those things against the current laws.
So I guess, can I do a follow-up question on that, please?
Yes, but please do.
So with that, with Prax saying not at this time, is he trying to work at some way or another to get that before next year or next budget? And the reason why I'm asking that question is because of the child abductions, the sex trafficking of kids and minors or adults or women, okay? And the way that these advertisements have been going on and through the state of Alaska when we go into the bathroom and see the posters and whatnot. So that's why I'm asking these questions in which I'm asking. Because I
Hey.
think it would be good to have that rainbow umbrella. And I think that's something he should try to help push through.
I think it'd be a good thing for us to put to him as a council saying that we support this project. That would be
Right.
something I'd encourage. I could bring that forward if the council so wishes. That would help
Yeah,
boost
I think so. Because this variable, not only for the villages, which is where they're, from my personal experience, is been attacked the most. And then it's trickling down into like Anchorage and Juneau and Fairbanks. Okay. And so I do think from my perspective at looking at this, that this is something that our legislation and should really consider for the safety of the kids and the young ladies and stuff, or young boys that are been taken or misused. And then the silence that people are beginning to not want to talk about it to protect them. Okay.
So true. This policy project touches so many aspects of our society. It's hard to explain in such a short period of time to folks, especially legislators, get them on board and understanding how procedures and policies affect responses by police agencies to things like this. So yeah,
Yeah.
I agree.
Okay. That was my question.
Anyone else?
Pertaining to the parent education, any outlook as to when we could have a recap or redo of that presentation?
My understanding is Lieutenant Smith is up to speed now and he can teach those courses. So I'm hoping we can do that soon. And then I will get in there and help him out with the advertising and get some TV stuff and get it in the paper and do a little better job at getting this one advertised. So we could, I'll check back with you and let you know.
Thank you.
On a different topic. So as far as the Alice training and stuff like that, I know we did it in the very beginning of my councilship here. Are you planning on maybe doing another mini presentation of that for the council?
Sure, I can, absolutely.
I mean, I don't know if some of the newer members have gone through that Alice training, whether it's at a school or whatever. But I can tell you, it's pretty powerful to do that. And I'm in the classroom every day. And I can tell you, I have my eyes open, and we just had an incident in our school where somebody walked in with a gun and no badge, no nothing. Turned out to be that the person was a trooper. But when I asked him why he's carrying a gun in the school, he said, so? And then after pushing the issue a little bit further, and he says, well, I'm a trooper. And I said, well, you're not in uniform. Could you just cover up? And he goes, can't do that. So that was an interesting one. So I took it to my principal from there on. I don't know what happened after that, but according to our person that we deal with the trooper said that he keeps harping on his people. If they're not in uniform or don't have a badge showing, they're supposed to be concealed. So it was quite an interesting one, but I can tell you, I was looking at options, thinking from what you had taught us, as far as what do I have here that can distract him? What if he decides if he was not what he said he was? So I thought it was very interesting. I mean, I was right next to the person and decided that if he was even made a move that could look like that, he would have been bowled over. I mean, I would have hit him so hard that he would have come down on it, but I think that it would be very beneficial for the council to maybe go through that little exercise again. So,
Happy to do it.
Thank you, Chief. Chief, the other chief, the other chief, Chief Heineken, hi. Good to see you, face.
Good evening, everybody. I didn't have a formal report for you tonight, but just a couple quick things I have. The trip down to the Pierce factory went really well. The engine's really coming along well. You've seen most of the pictures I've sent out. They do have a proposed final date, the first week in May. We'll be returning there to do the final inspection on it, and then it'll ship after that. So coming along really well. We didn't find any major issues with it at all. A few little things we're having them tweak that definitely made the trip worthwhile. In other news, we got the announcement out statewide to area fire departments about the retirement of Engine 24, and receiving a lot of feedback. There's a lot of interest in the state from some very small communities that are already asking about it. Get the word out if you know anybody in these small communities that could use fire apparatus. It looks like we'll definitely have quite a few applicants for this. So that's all I have this evening. I could be happy to take questions.
Questions for Chief Heineken?
are you looking for somebody from the council to be on your
Yeah,
selection committee? I would like to volunteer if you.
Yeah, we'll be putting the committee together, probably sometime in May. The timeline is we'll stop applications mid-June, and late June, early July is when the committee will meet and do that. So I figured, we've got some time by the end of May, we'll probably have the committee put together.
I have a question there. I keep thinking I see somebody, but it's the thing sticking up back there. It's a coat tree. Looks like someone's hand. Are you getting any, feedback on how other departments are doing for fire departments in the way of, getting stations built or anything of that nature? getting any money from the legislature.
Not that I'm aware of. The Fairbanks area has definitely struggled to try to get any funding. I mean, we're not the only department that needs fire stations. There's, the entire interior, has had little funding for fire stations over the last 2 decades. The Matsu Valley, I know, has built up some nice stations over the years. Other places down south, but I have no idea. I have no information on how they're funding those.
Okay, that was the only thing I had to ask. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
I just had a question.
Oh, you have your hand up? Or are
I
you-
do know.
Now
So-
you do, yeah.
All right. Discussing with Pierce on the travel of the new engine, did you discuss, was it approved for them to drive it across?
Yes, actually, I did get clarification on that. I'm glad you brought it up. Yeah, they will. That is their plan, is they actually have contractors that drive it across country. That'll go to the Portland area where, the subcontractor that we actually buy it through HFE, is based. And then they will take it to the port of, Tacoma, put it on the barge. It'll make it to Anchorage. And then from Anchorage, it'll either be driven up, by them or put on the rail.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you very much for asking that question. Thank you, Chief. Appreciate it. That leaves, Mr. Danny Wallace here. I know her, but he's one of the directors.
Thank you. I'll talk a few special topics and then I'll talk about the departments. For Moose Creek, we continue to replace meters, and actually that just started today. I'm not sure if you remember, but we had problems with connectivity for the meters at Moose Creek with AT&T, so we're switching the antennas for those over to Verizon. Respect is the contractor working those, but we are working to ensure that the billing is appropriate. And that's a replacement that's going to go on over the next few weeks. Also for Moose Creek, we have a number of hydro seeding and some other groundwork that needs to be done in the area after breakup in May and June. That'll occur. And for Moose Creek, we still anticipate we still have the program officially ending, the project officially ending on June 30th, but we did find out over the last couple of weeks that there are some administrative requirements for filing through the Air Force that may push that out. They may ask for an extension to make sure that all the paperwork's right for Moose Creek. But the bottom line with that project is it's on track. We're fully engaged. And again, Moose Creek has been fully folded into our list of customers as far as for water. Again, that project continues to move forward. For summer hires, thank you, Ms. Dion, for posting our summer hires packages and the summer hires advertisements on the website. Those have all been announced today. We've got 3 positions, and I encourage council members, if you do know anyone that would be interested or eligible for those 3 positions, we've got 2 public works and 1 summer intern, and I can provide more information on that. The close date for those is April 19th, and we anticipate a decision by the 1st of May. Last week, I went to the Northwest Managers Conference. Fortunately, it was in Fairbanks. I did not have to travel for this regional conference, which was, although I am not a city manager, I do a significant amount of duties that overlap with some of those that other folks do in that conference. So it was good to talk to folks. Jim Williams, the chief of staff for Fairbanks North Star Borough, he was the host of the conference. I did send out a note about this to you, and if there's any questions about it, please let me know. Again, engagement and training externally is very, very important, I think, for the city and for my own professional development. And I did have a significant amount of lessons learned as a result of that. Again, it was a good no-cost conference that provided a significant amount of information for me. And then the other special topic, we did begin work with our grant writer. They went on contract on March 21st, and then we had a coordination meeting with them last week. This week, the grant writing team will participate in some meetings that we have with some of our key projects, to include the combined the power plant, but the Two Bears folks. On the Two Bears folks, we have dumped all of our requirements and all of the city priorities from the police, fire, city services, and some of the other ones. We've given them that information, and again, they're starting to move out with seeking opportunities. For the building department, we continue to work with the Westcott Pool project manager on building permit requirements. And just today, they gave us back an assessment worksheet that says these are the things that are going to be done within that building. Based on that, we'll go through and calculate how much the building permit will cost in the areas that need to be inspected. We're working with one of our contract inspectors on that. And we think that'll be on track. That's a very large project. And we want to ensure it's properly inspected and properly done according to city code. For Public Works, we closed bids on the street sweeping project, and I'll present information in the next council meeting for that. Again, that was successful. We are continuing to work on our summer projects list, and we'll have an internal meeting to review those next week on April 12th. And then I'll publish those, and that's certainly, we're not limited to those, but I would like to give the council an idea of what we are going to be doing this summer, especially considering that we are getting additional support from summer hires. And finally, for Public Works, they're continuing to do snow removal and push snow away from the roads throughout the city. We're integrating the stormwater drainage, the drainage survey folks into our efforts. So as we move snow around, they're going to watch and they're going to look at how things drain across the city, so we can sort of form a plan to get at some of the yearly flooding. And then finally, utilities department, very quiet in that area. Utilities operations just continue to go as they usually do for this time of year. I'll answer any questions that the council might have.
Well, I'll start off, Danny, there. When it comes to the grant writer's expectations of the narrative or whatever it is that we're supposed to show that we are actually engaged, we just can't give it to them and say, here, go write it. What are we getting any feedback from them at this juncture, seeing how the day's April 3rd, and we know two of the things we have that are congressional designated spending, better known in the WAPAC as earmarks. Do we hear anything from them that we're up to speed with them on that or not?
From the from Senator
feedback.
Murkowski's staff?
Yeah, Murkowski.
We did, and we did have contact, been talking to the mayor about some of the issues that congressional staff contacted us about two of our priorities, and we provided information on those. Again, it's been a sort of a process that the first time I've gone through the process with Senator Murkowski's staff, but they did ask for additional details. We've been communicating with them. I think we're going to meet the deadlines for that.
Yeah, I think they're pretty much being considerate of us to say, hey, look, you might know that the most Senator Murkowski got last year was 115 million. So any way you can modify what you're asking for now, which is telling us if you want to be considered a player in this game, you better come up with a lower figure, correct? Because we may be asking for too much in the very beginning here, so.
Right, they came back with questions about the water main replacement, and they asked, do you need the money for all of it, or can you do with less? And again, we sort of we gave them some different options. One of them included just the design of the project, and again, that would get that project going. The other thing they asked about is some of the lines of distribution for Brookside Park and how that project could be scoped. So we had discussions back and forth with those folks on those two projects. The third one that we submitted, the effluent outflow, they didn't have any questions about that, but we did submit a fairly comprehensive package on how we were looking for funding.
Do we owe them any more explanation on, say, what Three Bears will need or what Lab 263 will need, or are they satisfied with the narrative we already provided them in the concept?
At least so far, they're satisfied with it.
Okay.
Like I said, I have contacted them and said, if you need anything else, let us know. We got those two requests. Again, I was in the middle of conference last week, and they left a message on my phone, and I immediately called them back, because that has been one of the problems with communities, is not responding in a timely manner to these requests for information from the senator's office. So we paid attention to that. Again, right now, I think we've provided them all the information that they need.
So if we ever need any of that narrative to our own grant writers for other ways of trying to get that money, we've already got it written.
Right.
So we
Got a
don't have to
template for that.
reinvent the wheel. Thank you very much. Any questions for Danny? Yes, Anton. Oh, Dejan.
I was just wondering, is there any, thoughts about, upgrading the meters in the actual city of North Pole, or, cause I know Bill Butler was talking about that a long time ago.
We've talked about that, and I know that there were presented some different options for meters, and some of them where you could turn them down or turn them off remotely. And there's other ones that just have, provide more data on the water usage, and especially if you have a water leak, and we do that routinely with some of the meters. If we see unusual usage, actually Melanie will reach out and say, hey, you've got a water leak or some sort of problem. We've presented some options, and we're still looking at options throughout the city as far as replacing it, but we do recognize that as a need for the city as far as replacing some of the old meters. Really, most of the meters that are out there are 15 to 20 years old, and they're coming to the end of their lifespan. But the thing is, when a meter goes bad in the city, Paul Trissel and his folks, they go out and they replace it. They have enough on hand to do the individual ones, but as far as an overarching one that we'd like to do, we're still looking at options on how to do that. It costs about $300 a meter for us to replace those. So we really, right now, we're just, as they come up, we're replacing them. We haven't gotten a comprehensive plan yet, just because of the cost.
Is that an option for like grant writers?
And to be honest, we've actually gotten funding from the state revolving fund. We've gotten a loan for that. We did get earmarked about $700,000 for that. The only problem is that it's not forgivable. It's just basically a loan to do it, and we're looking for more cost-effective ways to do it. So, and it is something that we have it on our list of priorities for the grant writers. It's just not as high as some of the other ones that are up there, but I'll take that back. So.
As well. You can use your microphone to get my attention.
Okay, well, I got a
I see you got a
person
pointer dog.
flagging over here on the
Yeah.
backside. So I was curious also on the water meters. Who pays for the meter? Is that the person who gets it installed, or is it the city and it's just rolled into the
It's
overall
rolled
budget?
into the cost, but if they have a new one of the more advanced water meters, they do pay a fee. I think it's a 95% fee, 95-cent fee every month, or there's a minimal fee that they pay every month to help with the upkeep of the meters. But majority, if someone's meter goes bad, we roll that into the cost. But if they have the advanced one, then they'll see an additional line on their bill that pays for the upkeep of those newer meters. So.
What is the approximate pay range for the summer positions? Just if someone has
It's set the same as last year. It's at $20 an hour.
$20 an hour
Yes.
for the two public works and also for the intern?
Yes. And
And
last year we paid, go ahead, sorry.
and approximately what is the length of the employment from when to when?
It's about 12 weeks. We try to be flexible just because the majority of our folks that we get are students. So we base it, the start time is sort of based on when they're available, and end time is when they need to go back to school. And last year we had folks that didn't go back to school, so we did extend it, and we extended a couple folks into September. We had one person that left in August based on his school date. So we really try to be flexible. We market it as a summer internship at about 12 weeks.
And what is the minimum age requirement?
The minimum age is 18 years old. The issue that we have is if we hire two folks that are 18 years old, then the minimum age is 19 to drive one of our vehicles. So we like to get a mix of folks. So, but the minimum age is 18 with a high school diploma.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry.
No,
Sorry.
No, when you talk to minimum
Very
age,
good.
that was my question, but I looked at the application and there's nothing about minimum age. It says high school diploma, valid driver's license, and clean driving record.
Okay, I can go back and look at that.
But I
Yeah,
didn't see.
Yeah,
any
I'll go
minimum
back.
age.
Yeah, I'll go back and look at that. And that may be also a bad assumption. Again,
Yeah,
high school diploma, but you could have a 16-year-old with a high school diploma. So, right.
Any other questions? Thank you, Dan. Madam Clerk, what do you have for us?
All right, good evening, everybody. So I am just waiting on that final okay from Revise saying that our website is good to go. I've been patiently waiting and trying not to bother them, but it's starting to bother me. So I might drop a little email tomorrow, kind of see what's up with that. Otherwise that, you guys will notice at your spots that I did leave you a copy of that new bullying and harassment policy along with an acknowledgement because the policy affects you too. I need you guys to acknowledge that you received that policy and just drop it off to me if you could. And then a little reminder for the department heads, I really need to get those acknowledgements back if you guys are working on this. And that's all I have.
Madam Clerk, I have a question. When do you go down to your municipal clerk's training? Is it May or June this year?
It's the second week in June.
Second week of June. Will you have coverage in your absence or will it even impact?
I will not be missing any meetings. I will miss the staff meeting in preparation for, but that's about it.
What about other things that you're in training like PIO, Public Information Officer?
I think I found a certificate training that I'm gonna kind of further look into. There's a group that I belong to. It's a public relations group, and they have a couple of certificate programs. So I'm just trying to kind of narrow down which one I think is going to be kind of the best fit for our needs. And then I will bring that for you guys to kind of look at. And that's about it.
Any questions for the clerk? Thank you, Madam Clerk. Do we have a borough rep report?
We do. It was my lucky draw to attend the Borough Assembly meeting the last Thursday of March. I did start off by thanking them for investing again in our community with the Westcott Pool improvements. I also encouraged the borough to continue funding grants to homeowners and businesses so that they could convert and connect to natural gas to help improve our air quality and lower heating costs. I also shared that the North Pole Council passed a resolution expressing concerns about the trucking plan and the impacts that it will have on our community and residents. There were some interesting questions from assembly members regarding the sulfolane and PFAS plume, and I was able to explain to them the movement pattern of those plumes and what areas are not in that pathway. That was the concern of some of the assembly members, if a certain area was in that plume, in that area, and I said it was not traveling in that direction. The rest of the evening was the assembly reconsidering their own resolution on the ore hauling plan from the Mancho mine to Kinross mines up the East Highway, and unfortunately, at the end of several hours, they basically passed a resolution that had no real value. Did not take into concerns any of the residents who testified earlier about quality of life issues, health issues, safety. It was disheartening and disappointing to see what I would say lack of leadership.
Any questions from our borough rep? Thank you for doing that. Was that a good experience for you? It's been a while.
It was like a deja vu experiencing back in the assembly chambers. It was a good feeling.
Did you go live or did you go resume?
I was there live.
Live.
Yeah. I do have an update on the North Pole Community Chamber of Commerce luncheon, if you'd like
Yeah, I
me to
would
share on
like
that.
to hear that too. We didn't know where we were gonna fit that in at, but we're going to.
Okay. We met as as a city with the Northville Community Chamber of Commerce on March 28th at the Hotel North Pole to present the state of the city of North Pole. Danny Wallace put together an excellent slideshow for us to follow, and so it was very easy to do our bit. I started off by explaining the structure of our government and how our departments work. And then each of the department heads went on to share their points. Chief Dutra talked about the police department, Chief Heineken about the fire department, Mr. Wallace about city services. I mentioned our financial department and information about that. Our city clerk talked about upcoming elections and the human resources. Then I was back up again about talking about long-term challenges and initiatives. Some of them are hiring, retaining a quality workforce for police and fire departments, maintaining, improving city infrastructure, fire department, police training facility, fire department building, police training facility, replacement of the water main, sewer, streets, buildings. Our costs are outpacing our revenues because of the increase in fuel prices and our costs of our sewer treatment plant. I also explained to them that we have one of the most unique interior sewer treatment plants this far north, and as a city, we can be very proud of the success and the life of that sewer lagoon, and that speaks to our excellent staff that has maintained it over the decades. It's very few communities with our climate can successfully keep open water lagoon system running as we have. We also talked about our housing needs and the increase in our population due to the expansion of the F-35. I also, towards the end, kind of did a shout out of our department heads because I think we can really be proud of what they bring to the table. I had the police chief talk about his participation on the Alaska Police Chief Standards Council. Close, is that? Close. And also being the president of that, and also that he is working on the accreditation of our police department. I also had the clerk explain the different certificates and training that she has achieved in her time here at the city. I also spoke about the director of city services and the many projects that he has on his plate to address our replacement of our water mains, the snow removal challenges, in a very flat environment. It's very hard to get water to drain away. And then also that we're working on a drainage plan. In my excitement, I did overlook the fire department, didn't call out Chad to say things. And so I want to correct that and say, Chad, I think, is one of our most enthusiastic and professional fire chiefs that we've had. Your communication is outstanding. It really is. And I think that your heart is in the right place when it comes to providing a level of service not only within our community but throughout the state. In your concept of retiring Engine 24 and making sure that it goes to a good home where it will be used and needed, and that community will be benefited. So I think overall it was a really well done presentation. The audience was mostly the chamber board members with maybe one or two community members. We did have one good question, and that was from a chamber member questioning why doesn't the city own and operate its own snow removal equipment like the city of Fairbanks does. And Danny was able to address that, but I think for the council, if you're ever asked that question, I put together briefly, just some of the equipment costs. It's not an easy thing to suddenly have, an operation that has the equipment to remove the snow. Minimum, you have to have at least one road grader. That costs $600,000. Then if you want to do anything with that snow, you're gonna need a front end loader, and that starts at about $550,000. If you're going to then use that front end loader with a snow blower attachment, we use the RPM 40R, and that runs at $300,000 to put on the front of that loader to blow the snow up into the dump trucks. And the end dumps run between $250,000 and $300,000 for just one dump truck. You can imagine how slow it would be if we had one dump truck, because you have the grader pulling the snow into a berm in the center of the street. You have the front end loader with the blower filling up the dump truck. That one dump truck gets full, drives away, has to empty, drive back, and get filled up again. So that means that you have to have multiple dump trucks to keep that process flowing and not taking weeks to do that. The city of Fairbanks, we started transitioning to use what are called side dumps. They are 40-foot long, and they basically, with the sideboards when they put on, are the equivalent to 2 to 3 12-yard end dumps. And so that has accelerated our ability to move more snow quickly. But those are in the range of $90,000 just for the side dump. And then for the tractor is about $150,000. So it's about $250,000 for just one side dump. So that's just the equipment cost. Then you have to have a place to put all of these pieces of equipment. And then you have to have a staff that can maintain them, because these big toys break and they are costly to repair, and the parts are not always easy to get when you need them. So that's why the city of North Pole does not remove snow by having a department with all of these pieces of equipment. So I just wanted the council to be aware of that. So if anyone does ask that, you can kind of mentally just go through this list of how expensive that would be to have. It's expensive also to hire out a contractor to do it, but it is much more cost effective to do it that way, because we don't have to then maintain those pieces of equipment nor warehouse them. And then of course they wear out. That means that you have to start all over again and buy new pieces of equipment. So, that's my report, Mayor.
I asked you a question about that.
Sure.
Because you gave such a great report. When you do have to have that type of equipment, because y'all have so many roads in the city of Fairbanks, and I was noticing the whole area between 9th and 10th and all, and it said in the middle of the road they had signs. Have everything off the street by 7 a.m. What do you do when these people don't get out of the way and they park in front of the apartment?
Well,
7 a.m.
we put out the signs that by code, we have to give them at least a 12-hour minimum notice. We try to give them more than that. And these are plastic orange signs that says do not park on the street after 7 a.m. for the day crew. And then for the night crew, it's that do not park on the street after 9 p.m. If there are vehicles that are parked on the street when our equipment arrives, it doesn't always arrive exactly at 7 a.m. or 9 p.m. We try to make contact with the owners of those vehicles to get them to move it. And if we are unsuccessful, they are towed away to our, uh, impound lot, and those homeowners then have to pay the towing fee, the storage fees to get their vehicles back out. It's an intense, labor-intensive process. We have crews that go out every day to put out the signs, and then crews that go out and do the work, and another crew that picks up the signs and moves them to the next day's location, and on and on and on.
What does the liability insurance cost, something like that? Even if you don't own the equipment, you still have to have some sense of liability insurance in case somebody wants to come after the city, right?
Right, I think the city, we use the AMLGIA, so, I'm not really sure, what that is, but we have the ability, I think, as the city, if there are lawsuits or claims for damages for any of our operations, police, fire, public works, the city will pay for those costs if we are responsible, but then we're able to raise the property tax enough to cover those, expenses due to the liability and risk.
Any questions for Pro Tem? Such a great report, thank you. Madam Clerk, even though you asked me to handle this, I'm gonna handle it now. At this point, Ms. Welch went to Timber Creek Saturday on my behalf. I knew it was gonna be a bridge too far for me to get there, so if Ms. Welch would like to give her report on Timber Creek.
No, it was a very interesting, facility. I've seen many facilities around, different states. And I've seen them in my native country of Denmark. And this was probably one of the ones that were closest to the ones I've seen in Denmark. I always thought a lot of the facilities seemed to be warehouses. And this didn't seem like that. It seemed more like a hotel, to be honest with you. And I think Ms. Clack can probably, add something to that part. She got a chance to go look at it. But some of the things that I noticed was that they had areas of activity. You know, there was an area that had crafts and stuff. They had a exercise room, had a theater. They even had a private they dine in a dining room, which is more like something in some ways that you would see on a cruise ship. You know, it's like little round tables where people can gather and socialize and stuff. But they also had a private dining area, like a little sunroom off the side. So if somebody had guests and they brought the family, they could actually take the family out in this dining room to do that. The whole place was very airy and natural light. It was in abundance. Another thing that I really thought was really neat was the fact that they had a kitchen that functioned more like, almost like, not like a hotel where you had a menu or whatever, but I'm sure they have options when you eat. The food that they put out for us to enjoy was well prepared, was nicely laid out. It looked good. It wasn't just something that was sitting there like slop on a plate or anything like that. So I think the residents that I talked to one lady that was there and her little scooter, and she was very excited about it. She said they're taking good care of us. They are, you know, prompt with making sure that the rooms are clean. If they had to have medication, they have somebody on the staff. There's a medication room that's locked and somebody's in charge of it, and people will get the medication on time if they have that service a part of it, or they can even just get a reminder that, hey, did you take your medication? It doesn't have to be that they do it. So I think there was a lot of very nice features with this. The part I didn't get to see, because I didn't get a chance to sit down with them, was more the financial side of it. What does it cost to be there? I know that Tony that invited us to come and see it was telling me that one of the things that they had was they were pretty proud that they had, I think they said 62 of the units I think there's 68 units. Is that correct, Mr. Mayor? 68 units. 62 of those are eligible for low-income housing, assistance, Medicaid, Medicare, housing like that. So that was pretty nice. So that it will not just be a high establishment of that. They will also be able to be for people who don't have quite the means to do that. So they were pretty proud about that. And one of the things that was really important, I thought, was the fact of all the activities that they had planned. I mean, they already had, they had the junior mushers there, they had ice carvers, they had balloon guy, they, you know, all these different things. And Tony told me that this is not something that they're just going to do as a one time. They're trying to get the community to be a part of it, because if there's something that's important for people who all of a sudden have to leave their usual surroundings, is that they have a community to come in, but not just the community of the older people or the people that need the assistance, but also people from the outside. So he was very excited to hear that I usually spend some of my summer visiting with people in the Denali Center. So he wanted to make sure that I brought the poodles to the facility, and I have kind of made a promise that we will make sure that we visit with the animals so that the folks can have a chance to see that. And there are many other activities similar to that.
Thanks for filling in for me. Ms. Quack, you went to that. Do you have anything?
No, it was a
Okay.
very nice facility. The staff I was highly impressed with, very friendly. Just like, we spoke with a gentleman and he expounded that he'd been in 3 facilities. One didn't even have hot water. So, he was kind of disappointed in that because it was kind of upscale to him, he thought, but, he really liked this. He liked the fact that the staff and everybody was on cue, made sure everybody was okay. The meals were great. The hors d'oeuvres and everything were really excellent. My grandson enjoyed the shrimp. So, yeah, it was really good. And the balloon guy, he knew the balloon guy. So the balloon guy, police officer and fire chief, made him a police car and made him a fire truck. Okay.
Balloon magic.
They got high compliments, and most of the girls walked around with octopuses. So they were very, very awesome looking.
Thank you for the report.
Mayor?
Yes, sir.
I see in my brochure that I have that some, just if you're interested in the cost, if you are in a studio apartment, it starts at about $5,000, a 1-bedroom suite, which is, I think 500
Or feet.
540 square feet, is 5,600 a month. If you have a second person there, you add another $1,000 to that. But those fees include dining, activities, transportation, housekeeping, laundry, services, and utilities. And then if you have assisted living needs or with higher caretaker, then there's additional charges based on what your needs are. So it doesn't come cheap, but when you compare it to other assisted living places, those are very reasonable, especially if they have abilities to use Medicaid and Medicare assistance instead of just all personal savings.
Appreciate that. That's why I have assisted care policy. I've had one for 22 years now. This is kind of how in advance. We'll move on now. For those, it's not a city ongoing project, but it's a governor ongoing project, so that you'll know. May 22nd through the 25th will be the governor's Alaska Sustainable Energy Conference. And 22nd is just showing up at night at 5:30 to 9:30, just meet and greet everybody and network with people. But then the better part of it is the Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. If you want to find more, I'll have the clerk put it on our new website when it gets up, but you can email this to you, but you can also look it up, alaskasustainableenergy.com. Alaska spelled out, alaskasustainableenergy.com is where you'll find all that information.
that be here in Fairbanks?
No, it'll be in Anchorage, and
Oh.
it's for the state, and it's the governor's the sponsor of it, and he's there. And it was a big thing. Last year, I was on a panel on Monday. And, they're not doing the same kind of schedule this year that I did last year, when I was there last year. That's how Dr., remember Dan Holder that came here in November, that's how he learned that we had a finding power. He couldn't even believe that North Pole was involved in that stuff. It's a big thing. So we'll move on. There is no unfinished business. Item 12. We'll go to new business under item 12. We have one thing on that 2306, an ordinance of the city of North Pole to amend the pay scale for the city of the North Pole Police Department for employees. Madam Clerk, if you bring up pages 13 to 15, we'll have that. And that's the only thing we have left on this agenda tonight. You got it.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's a spider. So what we have before you tonight is a change to the pay scale for the police department. And this was presented to the council. Basically, in order to afford this, we are cutting one position to the police department and reducing from 14 to 13 in order to pay for the changes here. The changes are necessary due to the obviously the schema we're facing in law enforcement these days across the country. We're starting to see wages climb, and the labor force that applying for police officer positions is shrinking. So in order to stay fairly competitive, we've asked the council to consider a $4 an hour raise to the pay scale, starting at the beginning officer wage, which was at 28, now would be 32. And the rest of the wages all then increase up the scale according to the 3% up to 10 years and 1.5% up to the 20-year mark. So this change will bring the basic wages of officers and the entire pay scale up to reasonable levels that help us recruit and retain police officers. We're seeing most of the nation offering hiring bonuses and some of these sky high wages, and 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off seems to be popular from the lower 48. So, this helps us stay a little bit more competitive than where we've been. So we're just asking the council to consider this and this increase. And the reason why we're asking for the decrease in personnel, we have been having a hard time filling the maximum 14 anyway. I think it's been like I showed you in the work session, we've only had 2 times in the last 10 or 12 years that we've even been fully staffed. It was for a very short period of time. So I think this will be an improvement, and we will obviously address the pay scale again here this summer to do across the state comparison to our wages versus other agencies. But this will help us get from here to there, and hopefully will help us recruit this summer and get folks into the fall academy. So I just asked the council to approve this pay scale, and you also have in front of you the wages that the officers would be going to also. So ask the council to approve those.
Thank you, Chief. Now open, Madam Clerk, do we have anybody that wants to testify or ask for public comment? Madam Clerk?
No, we do not.
Okay. Thank you. Seeing none, public comment for that is closed. Now, if I can have someone introduce that, please.
Move to introduce ordinance 2023-05, an ordinance of the city of North Pole amending the pay scale for the city of North Pole Police Department employees.
A motion by Jacobson, second by Welch. Any discussion now? Yes, sir, you have the floor.
I really appreciate my fellow council members and the mayor for responding so quickly to the chief's presentation work session that he gave us a few weeks ago. I wish all governments moved as fast as we are, but that's to our advantage and their disadvantage, because that will allow us perhaps to capture employees who are looking for a change and wanting to move to North Pole. So I encourage my colleagues to vote in support of passage of this. $4 sounds like a lot of money, but when you look at what we're competing against, it's the minimum that we could do to get turn the tide a little bit more in our favor. When I saw a $30,000 signing bonus in Juneau, it's like, oh my gosh, they must be really hurting to have to throw that kind of money out there. And I don't want us to get to that point where we're desperate because our numbers are so low that we are just taking desperate measures. So I think this is a more practical, prudent approach to say, we saw a need, we saw a wage gap. This is something that's attainable, affordable, and I would just encourage our chief financial officer, perhaps in our next packet, to have a fiscal note that would show what this proposal will cost us in 2023, and then what it would cost us in the 2024 budget, just as a projection. I don't think it's going to be a significant impact, but it's just nice to have those numbers in front of us.
Any other questions for Chief Dutra? I'll say this, when we look at a place like Juneau, if you knew anything about tobacco taxes, I know they don't want people to smoke, but when you take in the federal tobacco tax, you take in the state tax, that's all wonderful, but nothing like City of Juneau's tax. So each pack, pretty darn expensive. I think there's more than $7 tax, but more than 4 of it's just for the City of Juneau and all the fun things they get to do there with the harbor and tourists and things like that. I guess they have to have that kind of incentive there too. It's a high cost place to live, I can tell you. But one of those things I know from just coming back from a week there too. So that's it. When I was like way back when Bryce was mayor and I was on there, back in 2013 or something, it was about $4.35 a pack. Just keeps going up. But when you have that kind of coffers, you can afford to do that. Obviously, we can't afford to do that. So, Chief, you're probably right. It's better to get it in there in the basic pay. But when we get together this summer, we also need to look at some of the things that the state's telling us. I'm going to use the term Pontius Pilate for lack of a better term. It's like, you guys are at the grassroots level. Why don't y'all start taking care of your folks' retirement accounts and things like that? We're going to have to look at all the total compensation that we do or don't do. So this is just a stopgap measure, and I hope it pays off. But we'll know before we meet again later this year. So without any further ado, Madam Clerk, no other questions or concerns, if you would call the question.
All right, Mr. Cromer.
Yes.
Mr. Skip,
Yes.
Mrs. Welch.
Yes.
Mr. Keller,
Yes.
Mr. Jacobson, Mrs. Clock,
Yes.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes. Anyone wish to change your vote? See no changes.
Thank you.
This will be now advanced. So 7-0, so it advances to the next session on April the 17th. So that brings us to closing comments. Who goes first, Madam Clerk?
So Mayor.
Yeah.
I get a question about this, last ordinance. I was wondering, would you be able to put my name as a sponsor on this?
Oh, yeah, but you can wait till we get next time when we read it next time.
Okay,
We can put our names on that. And if you're not here, I'll remember you've asked.
Thank you.
Thank
I
you.
got you. All right, Mrs. Welch.
Well, not a whole lot. I've enjoyed some of the things that have been going on in our community out here. Really ran into a person who does a lot of stuff at the university with climate change and stuff. And we had a nice long discussion about our projects that we're doing out here. He's pretty excited about us coming up with a combined heat and power. Especially he likes the idea about the climate, what do you call it? The climate affecting part of it being you know, not being a polluting institution and then getting so many good things out of it. He was pretty excited about that. So I'm sure he invited us if we were interested, individuals or as a council, to come up and see what they do at the climatological research area up there at the university. He did say right now everything is pretty much covered in snow. And just to let him know if we want to come up and see what they do and how they measure pollution and all that kind of stuff. So let me know if you might be interested once we get into summer holidays. As far as school goes, I would definitely want to go up and see what he is doing up there. So that's it.
All right, thank you, Mr. Skip.
Yes, I'd like to thank, the police department. I talked to Chief earlier on today just about, Officer Bloom. My son got pulled over about 3 weeks ago. Bad situation, but Officer Bloom my son said, showed a lot of professionalism, calm the situation, really helpful, aided them in certain ways. He said if you had any questions about anything, give the police department a call, they'll straighten it out. But like I said, it made a really bad situation. We're getting pulled over, just made it a lot worse, just by the attitude of the officer that pulled them over. Just if you could pass that along to Officer Bloom. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Cock.
Well, I want to thank everybody for what we've done to work on the increase, the seriousness of what we need to do to bring on new employees for Danny for the summer, and looking at that new retirement place was really exciting, something that we've needed for some time.
Thank you, Mr. Keller.
Thank you, Ms. Clerk. I had the privilege of attending the parental education talking point that the lieutenant from Homer came up and gave. And he gave a wonderful presentation that I'm excited to hear Lieutenant Smith carry on and repeat multiple times a year. Especially with added or updated data that keeps coming in with data points. One data point I want to share, 1/3 of high school girls, 1/3 have had the thoughts, the ideation, and a plan to commit suicide. 1/3. Boys are lower than that, but that really hit home. And especially because I have 4 girls. My oldest is here with me today. So needless to say, I was like, holy crap, what do I need to do to make sure that I keep my girls safe? Right? So 1/3, it comes down to parenting and having an open, honest, what's the other one, Chief? Open, honest, anyways. Way to put you on the spot. Open and honest, right? Conversations, right? Having these conversations and having your home, having relationships with your kids, your stepkids, those that you adopted officially or unofficially, that you have open door policies. One other thing that he really pointed out that my wife and I are going to work on is when you talk to kids about them having these ideas and these thoughts or attempts of suicide, when you ask the kids are scared to talk to their parents because they're scared of the reaction from the parents. When you talk to the parents are just like, I just want to talk to you. I just want you to talk to me. So we have the dichotomy of the parent just wants the kid to talk, but the kid is scared of the reaction. So something my wife and I are going to be working on, hold us to this, is that we're going to have this open door policy, but no reaction initially. Now, yes, there will be consequences to some things, right? There's always consequences, good or bad. But to have this calm response to people coming up to you. Now, I'm not just talking about my girls. I have contact with multiple people, multiple adolescents, youth, even people into their 20s that have struggles with self-doubt, that have struggles with really their self-worth. in society. And it is a epidemic or almost pandemic thing going on here. So we need to make sure that we shed light on this and shed light that we as elected officials, department heads, that we open our doors, open our minds to being able to not just be there, but we can be a listening board, but we can also be an asset. The number 988, I believe, is the hotline. And we as Fairbanks area, I believe it's our area too, we actually have a emergency response team specifically for behavioral health instances like this. So those are little tiny resources, things, and I look forward to hearing more from Lieutenant Smith. For whatever reason, it wasn't well attended. I'd say there's less than 50 people there in attendance, but the response was good. And people were very well involved. So knowledge is power, especially when we apply it. And so this is something that I'm personally going to take back into my home and into my community. Because 1/3 is a lot of people that's just females. If you add males, males were at least 25%, maybe 24. But these are people that are doubting their self-worth, and the cost of losing one life is not worth anything. Everybody has a worth. And with that, I am grateful for the warming weather. Can't wait to smell the barbecues continuing, dry pavement, walking neighbors, getting to know the community more. So with that, keep being safe on the roads. With the heating up, cooling down, the roads are slick. So with that, I pass.
Thank you, Mr. Kramer.
I just want to thank the council for passing the harassment and bullying ordinance a couple weeks ago. I just want to let the people of the city know that if you feel harassed or being bullied, to please bring it up to HR, no matter how big or small it is, because, you know, I feel like that's important for the city to make sure that we have a safe environment to work at. And I hope people don't feel afraid to bring up any situation where they feel harassed or bullied. And other than that, that's it.
Thank you, Mr. Jacobson.
Thank you. Following up on Mr. Frimmer's comments, I noticed that on all of our chairs, we have a copy of the bullying and harassment city code, and then an acknowledgement of receipt of company policy. I'm assuming that you put that in front of us so that as council members, we can sign that document and give it to you to have on file, since we are subject to that policy.
Correct.
Okay, so I'm just encouraging you, don't take this home and lose it. Maybe fill it out and sign it. I think we've spent a lot of time on this policy and this code. If you want to take it home and read it more thoroughly and then bring it back to the next meeting, that's fine too. But it's important that we lead by example. Coming up in Fairbanks, there's going to be some exciting things happening this month. The Polaris building, that wonderful concrete eyesore that's been abandoned for decades and crumbling, is going to be removed starting. I've got my calendar dates kind of mixed up in my iPhone, but I want to say it's on April 11th at 1 p.m.
What time was
They're
that?
going to
I missed the time. Say that again.
April 11th at 1 p.m. But I also have it in my calendar for the 13th at 1 o'clock. So I'll have to have the clerk send out the correct date and time. Basically, it will just be a 20-minute ceremony where Mayor Cruz will talk about the Polaris project and all the partners involved in getting the funding and being able to remove the structure. So they'll take down the annex, which is the one-story building between the tower and the Tap House and the other businesses on Second Avenue and First Avenue. And that will be completed mid-May. And then they will have that lot filled in, backfilled with gravel and then compacted with wrap. So that will be an area for anybody, if you know, that wants to do a pop-up business or maybe a food truck rally. That space will be available to use during the course of the summer. So you can contact the city, Fairbanks, about those business opportunities. If you want to have some sort of outdoor event, that space will be there. Then in September is when the tower will come down. And that's going to really open up that whole block to see that building gone. It's incredible to think that that's happening.
Yeah.
If you are on the fast planning email list, they sent out a packet of information on Saturday, and they said the Polaris building demo adds rapids to the Chena River. The city plans to use the debris from the Polaris building demolition to build a Class 2-3 rapid system in the Chena River. This enhancement will increase tourism, help with erosion control, and contribute to vital fish habitat. And there's a picture of the building being imploded. The whole newsletter basically is an April Fool's joke. It's kind of fun to read through the different things. Borough Mayor is talking about a new transportation system, Fairbanks Autonomous Rapid Transit System, or FART bullet train. Then we're going to have lemon bikes, which are, have you missed the fair bikes that's where you could rent bikes? Get ready for the Alaskan rocket bike, moving people and transport, or armpit. Bike share program. Lemon bikes are coming to Fairbanks to reduce commute times. Access the lemon bike from any of the share stations seen around town, deploying summer 2023. And then there's it's a community minded. All of our bikes will be meticulously maintained to burn as hot as possible to keep you moving and snow melting. And then there's a quote from the Public Works Director in Fairbanks that says, one tremendous benefit to this that many folks aren't realizing is that the radiant heat from the rocket bikes will keep the sidewalks clear of snow, allowing our maintenance crews to focus on roads. This will be a huge cost savings for the city. So maybe North Pole should look at rocket bikes out here. And with that, those are my closing comments. I do have calendar packets for all the council members. With so many meetings between our meetings, the city of Fairbanks meetings, the borough meetings, the school district, I put together just a packet for easy reference for all the council members. I know we have the laminated one in front of us, but this one has actually all the different ones. So I'll just pass those out for everybody.
We pass some this way for you.
Thank you, Jeff.
And also welcome to Mr. Keller's daughter, who's joined us tonight for the city council meeting and has endured the entire meeting with a smile on her face.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, wow. So I'll just stick to the 11th Airborne, what I learned about them. The 11th Airborne has a real rich history, and they go back and they're sort of overshadowed by an event that we always remembered about Iwo Jima, with the raising the flag over Iwo Jima. But the one thing we might not know was on the same day that was occurring, the 11th Airborne was freeing people like General Wainwright, who'd been a prisoner of war for 3 years in the Philippines. So they have a very rich history. But I did get to listen very carefully to what the 4-star General Packap had to say. And he said there's 3 things that the Chinese have right now that we could do something about. One of those, and that is having interior lines. they have interior lines, north, south, east, and west of them, they have allies, whether it's the Soviets, whether it's the Iranians, whether it's the North Koreans, you know. So in that regard, we can do something about that. And I mentioned earlier tonight that they're bringing people like Finland and Sweden, expanding NATO. So we have people in the Pacific, we have people here in the Arctic that are definitely giving us the interior line. But just be aware of two things, okay, that we don't have. We don't have the math. There are just in their upper middle class, 400 million Chinese in their upper middle class. That's more than we have in the whole country here, our country, just their upper middle class. And the third thing he wanted us to know was what he calls their magazine. In other words, how much weaponry, how much ammo, magazine, think of a bullet magazine, but he said the whole thing, whether you're talking about aircraft carriers, fighters, whatever. So we have to do better with less people, and we have to have the better equipment because we don't have as much. And that was my big takeaway after spending a day and a half around the 11th Airborne Division. But we were told that we can expect that it will grow and expand. And they're going to build a new barracks for an additional 250 something people to be there. So when we think about what's happening at the Air Force Base, we better also understand it's happening at Fort Wainwright. And the area is just going to grow and grow and grow. And so I don't need to tell you, Chief Guttrell could tell you, when you got 25-year-old singles and younger living equidistant, whether it's up to the back gate of Fort Wainwright or the front gate of Eielson, doesn't that put a lot on your police department? It's not just the citizens inside the city of North Pole. And that in itself is quite a task. So as we grow, let's keep our eyes on what we're growing and how we're growing and how we do it best. So with that, I'll say comments are closed. And I need a
Move to adjourn.
move to adjourn.
Second.
So we got a motion by Welch and seconded by Clack. We adjourned at 56. We did it. Thank you, guys.
Too long.
Danny, Chief, if anybody wants, I've got a couple more packets for calendars.